Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. You'll get intimacy when I feel like it, she said. Then she looked back at her phone, thumb scrolling casually like she hadn't just gutted the last thread of connection between us. Her tone wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was worse, dismissive, like I didn't even register as real. I didn't speak, didn't ask what she meant, didn't argue. I just stood there, hearing her words echo louder than they were spoken. And then I smiled. Not out of humor, not out of spite. It was the kind of smile that only shows up when something inside you finally snaps into place. When the fog lifts, and you see clearly, for the first time in a long time, that it's over. Not ending. Over. She thought she was asserting control. What she didn't know? That smile was the start of my exit. Not a dramatic one. Not with slamming doors or raised voices. This wasn't rage. This was precision. That night, I lay in bed beside her. She didn't ask what was wrong. Didn't turn toward me. Just scrolled through her feed, screen light flickering across her face like she was alone in the room. She'd been alone for a while now. She just didn't know I'd finally joined her. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. Instead, I began calculating. See, when a man finally stops loving you, he doesn't announce it. He strategizes. By morning, I wasn't angry. I was done. I left the house early. Earlier than I needed to. I sat in my car, engine off, just breathing in the silence like it belonged to me again. No check-ins. No texts. No gestures. She didn't notice at first. Maybe she thought her coldness had finally trained me. Maybe she believed I'd accepted this was normal. But I wasn't adapting. I was detaching. I didn't make her coffee. Didn't remind her about the dry cleaning. Didn't fold her laundry. The man she once relied on? He went offline. At dinner, I said nothing. I ate, stood, washed my dish, and walked out of the kitchen without even glancing back. The first shift came 3 days in. She walked into the living room wearing a silk robe I hadn't seen in months. Lip gloss. Scented. Hairpin just right. She sat on the armrest beside me. Movie night? She asked lightly. I didn't even turn. Already watched it, I said, eyes on the screen. That silence. It hit her. Not immediately, but it landed like an echo in a cave. She leaned in slightly. Her fingers brushed mine. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just picked up the remote and changed the channel. She sat still for a moment, like she couldn't compute what was happening. Then she stood and walked out. Perfect. Because she wasn't supposed to get it right away. This wasn't about her noticing my absence. This was about her realizing I was never coming back. The next day, she texted me at lunch. Hey, you okay? You've been quiet. I replied 3 hours later. All good. That was it. No warmth. No punctuation. She started trying. Making dinner. Leaving notes. One said, "Miss you." I left it where she placed it. Didn't touch it. Didn't throw it away. Just ignored it. That night, she stood in the doorway of the bedroom, watching me read. You want to talk? She asked. I turned a page. About what? I don't know. Us, maybe? I met her eyes. There was a flicker of something in hers, something I hadn't seen in a while. Worry. But I just nodded once and said, I'm good. Then turned back to my book. Let her feel it. Let her sit in the quiet. Let her reach for something that wasn't there anymore. She thought intimacy was power. She thought she got to decide when I was worthy of being wanted. She forgot one thing. A man's silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's a warning shot. And she just missed it. The next few days were a masterclass in restraint. I didn't vanish. I didn't storm out. I became still. And that stillness, it was loud. Louder than anything I could have said. She tried to bait me, subtly at first. Casual mentions of coworkers I'd never heard of. Laughter too loud on phone calls. A new perfume she suddenly started wearing around the house. I didn't react. Not once. I kept to my routine. Gym at 6. Home at 8. Dinner alone. Then silence. I moved like a man who had made peace with solitude. Because I had. The things that used to sting, her indifference, her coldness, the passive-aggressive digs, they didn't register anymore. I wasn't absorbing the impact. I was observing it. And that terrified her. One evening, she stepped into the kitchen while I was meal prepping for the week. Something she never bothered to do herself. She stood there for a moment, watching. You're really getting into this cooking thing, huh? She said. I didn't even turn around. Someone has to. She didn't reply. just hovered. Like she wanted to say more. Like she wanted a reaction. But I wasn't giving her one. Not anymore. That night, she sat beside me on the couch, closer than she had in months. Her leg brushed against mine. I shifted slightly, not in anger, just enough to create space. She noticed. She stayed silent for the rest of the night. The next day, she wore lingerie to bed. Black. Lace. Strategic. I didn't even flinch. Just pulled the covers over myself and turned to face the wall. Let her feel that vacuum. Let her lay in it. This wasn't punishment. It was exposure. She had built our dynamic around being the one who withheld. Now I was doing it better. And I was just getting started. I changed all the auto payments tied to our shared account. Subscriptions, groceries, her favorite wine delivery. Gone. I moved my savings into a separate account. Private. Silent. Untouchable. The Netflix login failed that evening. She clicked. Refreshed. Tried again. Is the Wi-Fi acting weird? She asked. Nope, I said, not looking up from my laptop. Let her sit in that discomfort. Let her start to sense it. Not just my absence, but the unraveling of the world she thought was hers to control. I booked a weekend trip. Just me. Cabin in the woods. Left Saturday morning without telling her where I was going. I didn't post. Didn't text. Didn't answer her calls. When I came back Sunday night, she was waiting. Where were you? She asked, arms crossed. Out, I said, tossing my bag on the floor. Out where? Does it matter? The look in her eyes, confusion laced with fear, told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't used to this version of me. This man who didn't need her validation, didn't ask for her time. This man who moved like a ghost with a purpose. For years, she had trained me to wait, to beg, to adjust. But she forgot. A man who stops asking isn't passive. He's planning. And the scariest part? She hadn't seen anything yet. By the second week, something shifted in me. Not emotionally. Strategically. I stopped reacting, not because I was numb, but because I was done performing. Every moment became deliberate. Every movement, surgical. She still hadn't fully realized what was happening. But I had. I was erasing her, not all at once, but piece by piece. First came the physical distance. I started sleeping in the guest room. No conversation. No fight. No explanation. Just silence and a closed door. She knocked the first night. Said my name once. Waited. Then walked away. She didn't knock the second night. I started eating out more. Small diners. Local places. Sometimes I didn't even eat. Just sat at the bar with a drink and let the quiet surround me like armor. And people started noticing. At the gym, they asked if I'd lost weight. I had. At work, someone said I seemed more focused. I was. I was no longer managing a one-sided marriage. I was managing my exit. The house changed, too. I boxed up photos. Not all at once, just a few here and there. Replaced them with neutral frames. Landscapes. Art prints. Nothing that looked like love had ever lived there. She asked once, "Where's the picture from Maui?" I didn't even look up. Must have put it away. No emotion. No invitation to dig deeper. Let her wonder. Let the uncertainty eat her alive. She started cooking again. Full meals. Her signature dishes. Pasta with homemade sauce. Rosemary chicken. Stuff she hadn't made in over a year. I ate in silence. Washed my plate. Left the rest untouched. She texted more, too. Want to watch something tonight? Thought maybe we could go for a walk. Let me know if you need anything from the store. Each message. Ignored or answered with a single word. Busy. No thanks. Fine. This wasn't coldness for coldness's sake. This was calculated contrast. Because now she had to feel the thing she built for me. Distance. Indifference. Irrelevance. And it worked. One night, I came home late from the gym. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, hair down, mascara smudged like she'd been crying, but trying not to show it. You're different lately, she said. I didn't respond. Just took off my shoes and walked past her. She turned her head slightly. I miss how we used to be. I didn't flinch. Didn't turn. Didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing I heard. Because now, every word she spoke was being filed. Not for reconciliation, but for closure. She had made our marriage conditional. Love, time, and affection were rewards to be earned. And now, I was done playing for points. I started applying for transfers at work. Quietly. No fanfare. Just options. Just space. A clean break was coming. She just didn't know it yet. I watched her spiral gently, like a glass vase that hasn't hit the floor yet but already knows it's going to shatter. She posted a throwback photo on Instagram. Us, smiling. A beach behind us. Caption, missing simpler times. She didn't tag me, but I saw it. Her friends started messaging again. Is everything okay with you two? Heard anything from her lately? I didn't reply. Let them ask her. Let her explain the silence. Because silence, when it's chosen, is louder than any scream. And I had chosen it. The unraveling didn't start with a bang. It started with a credit card decline. She was at the salon. Texted me in the middle of a Thursday. Did something happen with the joint account? I waited 15 minutes before responding. Then typed. Moved some things around. Budget tightening. She didn't reply. That night, she brought it up again. Calm on the surface, but her voice was clipped. Why didn't you tell me you were changing things? I sipped my water. Didn't think you'd notice. And for once, she didn't have a comeback. She just stood there, unsure where to place her hands. Unsteady. I watched her in that moment, really watched. The woman who once controlled every emotional lever in the house suddenly had nothing to pull. That week, I changed every password. Banking, utilities, streaming services. I rerouted the mortgage to my private account. Took her name off the car insurance. Not out of spite, out of preparation. She used to say we were a team. But in teams, both sides show up. She'd been benched for a year, emotionally, physically, financially. And now the locker room was closed. She noticed the absence of control before she noticed the absence of love. That told me everything. I started closing loops. Met with an attorney, quietly. Reviewed assets. Tracked every transaction. Not to punish her. To protect myself. Because she wasn't just capable of detachment. She had perfected it. And now, I was matching it move for move. The following Sunday, I skipped our usual grocery run. She waited until late afternoon, then asked if I was going. Nope, I said without looking up. She blinked. We're out of a lot. You're free to go anytime. She didn't move. Didn't argue. Just walked away, confused. This was the new dynamic. I wasn't denying her support. I was removing her entitlement to it. The next day, I found her sitting in the garage, scrolling through her phone. The door open. Empty driveway. She looked up as I approached. Did you take the car? I switched it to my name. Her jaw tightened. You never used it anyway, I added. And just like that, one more thread severed. Later that night, I found a bag near the bedroom door. Half-packed. Unlabeled. She said nothing about it. Just let it sit there like a silent threat. But I didn't ask. Didn't question. Didn't flinch. She wanted me to wonder if she was leaving. She didn't understand. I had already left. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally, spiritually, I'd exited the marriage months ago. Now I was just collecting my pieces on the way out. I changed the locks 2 days later. She still had her key, but the sound it made in the door, when it didn't work, told her everything she needed to know. She knocked once. I opened. Seriously, she asked. I stepped aside. You're still welcome inside. But it didn't feel like home to her anymore. Because I had stopped being her home. That night, she didn't sleep in our bed. She stayed in the guest room. Didn't say goodnight. Didn't try. And I didn't go after her. Because the most powerful move a man can make is no move at all. By the end of the 3rd week, she started slipping in public. It wasn't big, just details. Makeup rushed. Outfit wrinkled. The woman who used to present perfection now looked off. Slightly undone. Like she hadn't slept. Because she hadn't. She thought silence would break me. She didn't expect it to haunt her. Her friends started calling me. 2 of them, actually. Asking questions they pretended were casual. Everything okay with you guys? Haven't seen her post in a while. That's not like her. I gave them nothing. Just a polite, we're both taking some space. That answer was enough. Because the silence that followed said more than the words ever could. She was unraveling, and now other people could see it. And for someone like her, that was worse than losing me. It was losing the image of control. Then came the Sunday brunch. We used to go together. Now I went alone. She showed up halfway through. Same spot, same table. Wearing a dress she hadn't worn in years. Too short, too bright, too desperate. She sat across from me, uninvited. Didn't say hello. Just stared. You could have told me you were coming, she said eventually. I looked at her like I was seeing a stranger. I didn't think it mattered. That hit harder than I expected. She looked down at her water. Fidgeted with the napkin. People were watching, noticing. And that was the real fracture. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing face. 2 days later, her sister called. She never liked me much, too quiet, too reserved. Now she wanted to meet. We sat at a cafe. She leaned forward, voice low. She's not doing well. I nodded. She made her choices. She says you're punishing her. No, I said. I'm just done waiting. She didn't argue. Because even her sister could see it now. This wasn't about revenge. This was a shift. Permanent. Calculated. Unshakable. The next morning, I got a notification. She'd removed married from her social profiles. No announcement. Just gone. A silent rewrite of reality. But I didn't care. Because while she was editing headlines, I was writing the final chapter. I started clearing out my things. Not in boxes. In silence. Files. Tools. Passwords. Memories. All erased like chalk from a board. I took the watch she gave me on our anniversary. Left it in the drawer. Didn't need it anymore. She saw it later. Picked it up. Just stared at it. Didn't ask. Didn't speak. She knew. That night, I heard her crying in the guest room. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just quiet sobs through the wall. But I didn't move. Didn't get up. Didn't feel anything. Because this wasn't sadness. This was balance. For every night, I stared at the ceiling wondering where she went. She now lay awake wondering when I disappeared. And I wasn't about to explain it to her. She had made intimacy transactional. Conditional. Occasional. And I had finally stopped bidding. Let her learn the cost of indifference. Let her live in the house she hollowed out. Because soon, she'd be the only one living in it. She started waking up earlier than usual. I'd hear her in the kitchen, opening and closing cabinets, pretending to be busy, making noise, hoping I'd come out, hoping I'd ask what was wrong. But I never did. I stayed in my room, finished my coffee alone, walked past her like she was furniture. That silence, it didn't just linger anymore. It carved itself into the walls. She began trying things, leaving little notes on the fridge. I picked up your dry cleaning. Made your favorite. Want to talk? I read them all, then tossed them in the trash, one by one. She asked once, quietly, while standing in the hallway, "Are we really doing this?" I didn't even stop walking. Just said, "We already did." Because this wasn't an argument. This was aftermath. And when you're standing in the ashes, there's no point screaming at the fire. I started locking my phone. Changed my routine. Stopped answering her calls when I was out. She noticed. One night, she checked my coat pocket while I was in the shower. Left it exactly how she found it, thinking I wouldn't notice. But I did. And I let her. Let her feel that anxiety. The one she used to inject into me with every unanswered text, every late return, every eye roll when I asked for attention. Now it was hers to carry. She started slipping more often. Missed a meeting at work. Forgot to pay her credit card on time. Cried in the car, then blamed it on allergies. I said nothing. She stopped wearing makeup. Stopped getting dressed up. Stopped pretending. And that's when the final crack showed up. She called my mother. I found out through a voicemail. My mother's voice was kind, but surprised. She said she's worried. Asked if I thought you'd talk to her. I didn't call back. Not my mother. Not her. Because once you step outside the game, you don't re-enter it just because the opponent wants a rematch. She came home that night, mascara streaked, eyes raw. Didn't say a word. Just stood in the doorway like she forgot how to move inside her own house. She'd spent so long making me feel like an intruder. Now the silence had turned on her. That weekend, I emptied the garage. Every item I owned, packed, organized, ready. She watched from the porch. Didn't ask where I was going. Didn't beg. Just stood there, gripping the railing like it was the only thing holding her up. I loaded the last box into my truck. Closed the tailgate. She didn't follow. Didn't cry. But her mouth opened like she wanted to say something. Maybe stay. Maybe why. I didn't wait to find out. Because when a man disappears, it's not with a scream. It's with a door that doesn't slam. Because slamming would mean he still cares. And I didn't. Not anymore. The first night I didn't come back, she didn't call. Not because she didn't care. Because she didn't know what to say. She probably expected it to be temporary. Thought I'd cool off. Thought I'd return. But I didn't. I rented a short-term place. Small. Clean. Quiet. No photos on the walls. No reminders. Just space. Space I didn't have to share. Silence I owned. I slept better that week than I had in a year. Meanwhile, she started texting again. Not the vague check-ins from before. Now they were precise. Pleading. Can we talk? Where are you staying? Please don't shut me out. I read them. Didn't respond. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I'd spent too long responding to silence. Now it was her turn to wait, to feel what it's like to exist in someone else's shadow. She tried reaching out to mutual friends. One of them messaged me, said she'd been falling apart, asked if I could give her a chance to explain. I declined, because I already knew her explanation. It would come wrapped in softness. Phrases like, I didn't realize, or I was just overwhelmed, or the classic, we can start fresh. But what she never understood was, this wasn't a pause. This was erasure. I began forwarding my mail, closed joint accounts, removed my name from anything tied to her. She didn't see those steps, but she felt them. And the more invisible I became, the louder the panic got. She sent a long message one night, a full page, telling me she missed me, telling me she'd been confused, that things got blurry, that she wanted to feel like herself again. I didn't reply, because the man she once dismissed, he wasn't waiting at the door anymore. He was busy building a life where her apology held no currency. The next morning, I woke to another text. A photo of us, old, from better times. No caption, just a last grasp. I didn't delete it. I didn't acknowledge it. I let it sit there, like a relic, like the last thing she could throw into a fire that had already burned out. She showed up at my new place 3 days later. I don't know how she found the address. Maybe someone told her. Maybe she followed me. She knocked. I didn't answer. She knocked again, longer this time. Then I heard her voice, soft, cracked. I know you're in there. I was, sitting on the other side of the door, still, calm, unbothered, because this wasn't revenge. This was closure. Not hers, mine. And closure doesn't come from conversation. It comes from finally living in a world where she doesn't get to narrate the ending. I heard her sigh, heard the footsteps fade. She didn't knock a third time, and I didn't watch her leave, because I wasn't curious anymore. I was free. It's strange how quickly peace replaces chaos when you stop chasing someone who's already gone. I didn't realize how loud the silence had been until I moved without it. No more walking on eggshells. No more decoding glances across the room. No more second-guessing if I was enough. I started filling the space around me with different things. Books I hadn't touched in years. Music I used to love before every room became hers. Late-night runs through quiet streets where no one expected me to explain myself. There was no celebration, no announcement, just rebirth. People at work began to notice. More than one person said I looked different, relaxed, lighter. And they were right, because I'd stopped dragging the weight of her expectations behind me. I changed my number, not to block her, to close the chapter. I didn't want a thread left dangling. No room for maybe later or someday. She was no longer someone I needed access to. A few days later, I opened an old email account I hadn't touched in a while, one I used during our first year together. It was full of photos, trips, notes, little videos. Her voice in the background, laughing. My face, smiling, eyes still believing. I watched one clip, just one, and when it ended, I deleted it all. Not out of bitterness, out of respect. Some things aren't meant to be archived. They're meant to be released. I got a new lease signed for a long-term place. Modern, bright, minimalist. No echoes of a shared past. I chose everything with intention. The couch, the desk, even the spoons. Because starting over isn't about erasing someone else. It's about remembering who you were before they started editing you. I didn't tell anyone where I moved. Not even my closest friends. Not because I didn't trust them, but because this part of my life wasn't for public discussion. It was private. Sacred. Mine. I even changed how I dressed. Not dramatically, but deliberately. No more neutral tones to blend in. No more avoiding mirrors. I started lifting again. Not for aesthetics, but because strength feels different when you've had to rebuild it from inside out. A week later, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. But I knew the handwriting. She'd written 3 pages. Mostly memories. Some regret. And one line that stood out like it was underlined in blood. I thought you'd wait for me. I read it once. Folded it. Set it in the drawer without reacting. Because that sentence told me everything. She hadn't missed me. She missed the man who used to orbit her. But he was gone. And what she didn't understand was that my silence wasn't a pause. It was a farewell. 3 months passed. By then, her name barely registered in my thoughts. Not from pain, from distance. It was like remembering someone from a past life. Vague, colorless, weightless. Until one night, I got a call. Blocked number. I never answer those. But I did, without thinking. Her voice came through. Fragile. Hollow. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't pretend we were okay. She just said, I lost the apartment. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, but because I didn't know her comfort anymore. She went on, trying to fill the silence with fragments of failure. She'd maxed out her credit cards. Got written up at work. Lost 2 friends who picked sides. Then the real truth slipped out. There's no one left. She didn't mean family. She meant orbit. For years, she'd been the sun. Everyone revolved around her. And now, she was standing in the cold. She asked if we could meet. I said no. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. Just no. Because when you build your kingdom on someone else's devotion, you never expect the silence to be this loud when they leave. She tried a different approach. Started following my new social pages. Reacting to stories. Liking photos she wouldn't have noticed when we were together. And then, she posted us again. An old photo. Black and white. No caption. Just enough to stir sympathy. A few people messaged me. Did something happen between you two? Are you guys okay? I didn't answer. Not to them. Not to her. Because I wasn't a ghost. I was just gone. She sent one last message. The kind people send when they finally realize it's over. I never thought you'd stop loving me. And that was the clearest sign that she never really knew me. Because I didn't stop loving her. She drained it out of me, slowly, repeatedly, until all that was left was awareness. Awareness of who I'd become, what I tolerated, and what I'd never allow again. I didn't reply. Instead, I archived the conversation. Not deleted, just sealed. Like an old letter you don't reread, but you keep to remind yourself. You survived it. I went back to my new world. New city. New circles. People didn't know my history. They only knew the man in front of them. Focused. Clear. Untethered. And I like that. Because the most dangerous man is the one who learns how to live without needing anyone's validation. Especially hers. It ended exactly how I imagined it would. Not with a door slammed. Not with tears. Not even with goodbye. It ended in silence. One ordinary morning, I walked through the city like I'd lived there forever. Coffee in hand. Music in my ears. I passed faces that didn't know my story, and I did know them one. And that was the power. Not escape. Evolution. I wasn't running from her. I was walking toward myself. She was gone from every part of my world. No photos. No numbers. No threads left to pull. Even the memories had started to fade, not from time, but from disuse. She became a name I didn't say, a lesson I didn't need to repeat. One night, months later, I ran into a friend we used to share. He hesitated, unsure what to say. Then finally, she's not doing great. I nodded. Didn't ask. Didn't need the details. Because whatever storm she was living in now, it wasn't mine to carry. He added something, almost under his breath. She thought you'd come back. That made me pause. Not because it stirred emotion, but because it confirmed what I always knew. She never believed I had the strength to leave for real. She thought silence was a phase. Thought my stillness was temporary. But silence isn't always waiting. Sometimes it's a verdict. I left that conversation without looking back. Went home to a place where every object was mine. Every room had peace in it. No one was watching the clock. No one was measuring love and favors. I sat at my desk, opened a blank document, and started writing, not about her, but about what comes after her. New plans, new direction, a future untouched by her shadow. Because that's the part they don't tell you about healing. It's not loud. It's not cinematic. It's quiet, methodical, and deeply personal. It looks like changing your locks without fanfare. It sounds like ignoring that one song you used to love together. It feels like sleeping better alone than you ever did beside someone who made you feel unwanted. I didn't hate her. I didn't wish her pain. But I also didn't owe her my presence in the aftermath of the fire she started and refused to put out. I rebuilt myself in silence. Stone by stone. Boundary by boundary. And when she finally realized she'd lost me, not just physically, but permanently, it wasn't a dramatic moment. It was the absence. The way her messages didn't get responses. The way her name wasn't saved in my phone. The way the man who once begged for scraps no longer existed. And if she ever passes me in a crowd someday, years from now, I won't stop. I won't flinch. I won't remember the sound of her voice. Because by then, she'll understand the truth. I didn't disappear. I just stopped being available to the version of her that destroyed us. And the final words she'll never hear. You wanted silence. Now live in it. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.